Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Welcome to episode 4 of absolutely do not even think about hitting the like button. In this video, we're going to pretend that the like button is radioactive lava. Right now, we got some home repair emergencies, and it reminded me of floor is lava, and so we can pretend the like button is made of polonium 210, and absolutely do not even go anywhere near it. Right. All right. Well, this in this episode, I'm going to talk about some memories revolving around Thanksgiving. Part of the reason I really despise holidays is three bad Thanksgivings. Actually, four. Actually, quite a few more. Four of them that I've had in times past. In 1998, we were getting ready for Thanksgiving. I was in sixth grade. I used to have this habit of looking for loose change everywhere I would go. We'd be walking somewhere, and my eyes would be always be on the ground looking for loose change. In the 1990s, payphone use was a lot more popular. I would always check the coin return slot for change. Vending machine use was also a lot more popular, and I would go check all the vending machines. One of my favorite things to do was to crawl underneath the vending machines for any coins that people had dropped. And I had collected hundreds of coins from doing that. I used to have a lot of time on my hands. And one Saturday, I was counting how around the time of Thanksgiving, I was counting how much money I had from my career of looking for loose change. And while doing that, my mom was on the phone, and she was really upset at all the noise of the change hitting the table. I personally think she overreacted. She had a 10-year-old kid who was excited about how much change he had during the holidays, and yet the only thing she could think of was to scream because she couldn't hear her mother on the phone, right? I bet even her mother wasn't as upset as she was. And my mom, after my mom had hung up the phone, she was so upset. She took all the loose change and threw it onto the floor and says, "Are you serious? This is what, $20, and you're counting it like it's millions of dollars. Are you serious?" I think she was more upset at my attitude about the money. I think the phone call with her mom was only an excuse to finally blow up at me for my attitude with money. I just love money so much. I even to this day I still do. Earlier today I recorded a video just how much I love money. Right? You guys saw it. A few years after that, obviously 9/11 happened. The Thanksgiving after 9/11 was one of the loneliest ones I ever had. People were scared out of their minds. There weren't too many events going on, you know, and all the news wanted to play was over and over and over again was the sequence of events that day. We must have watched that sequence more than we watched anything, right? As much as people are going viral over Taylor Swift videos, I bet the average American has probably watched the Twin Towers being hit more than any Taylor Swift video up here. And the average American who's over 25 has probably watched 9/11 more times than any of those Taylor Swift videos. I guarantee that. So it was just a really lonely time. And I also developed a huge fear of flying after 9/11. In 2003, my fear of flying was reinforced when Columbia exploded, and I swore I was never going to fly again. Thanksgiving 2003, my family took a trip to California to go see my cousin, and I stayed home because I had a fear of flying after what had happened with Columbia and with 9/11, and my parents left without me. And I caused a lot of trouble back home. I had an eating disorder. I had gone out to get my favorite foods, and I wolfed it all down. And I developed what psychologists call the abstinence violation effect, where you feel like you've already blown it, right? After a drink, when you've quit drinking, you blow it, and then you decide I might as well drink everything that I ever wanted to drink that I've been depriving myself of, right? I kind of developed that attitude. And so I walked back. This is a small town. I didn't have a driver's license at the time. I walked back to the grocery store to get a 10-pound bag of potatoes and some coconut oil to make my famous French fries. And I made them and I wolfed it all down. 10 pounds of potatoes. And now I felt I had really blown it. And I might as well eat everything that I've been depriving myself of. So I went back to the store. And before I could do that, I sat on a park bench and I just collapsed. And so one of our town's finest decided to ask me what was going on. And he asked me if I had been using anything. And sometimes cops don't have a good sense of humor. And I mistakenly joked to him that, yeah, food, that's my addiction. And he thought that was a code word for something. He called my dad, and fortunately, by this time, my parents were already at the airport. And the officer asked my dad what was going on. And my dad confirmed that, yeah, sometimes I do have an eating disorder. I wasn't joking to the officers about the food. And my parents were so upset. They were already upset that I stayed home and caused them trouble for leaving me home alone. And now I was sick from eating so much. And my mom didn't understand about abstinence violation effect, though. At the time, she was just upset that I caused trouble. It was only years later that we were talking about this did she actually understand the abstinence violation effect. My mom has a lot of addictions herself, too. They were unaddressed at the time, right? So she didn't have an opportunity to have an effect, right? She used to be a binge eater herself. She used to have OCD kind of problems. But until you address them, you can't really understand abstinence violation, right? It's the process of addressing them that could activate that, right? So it's kind of funny. My mom has since quit eating sugar. She pretty much she got type 2 diabetes and pretty much reversed it by not just cleaning up her diet. So that's good. Um, that was 2003. In 2014, I was working at a startup company. One of my colleagues there really upset me during the Thanksgiving break. He had asked, we had this rotation system of, we would rotate who would fix the bugs at the organization. We were working with software. Every week, one of us would be the go-to person for bug fixes. Just before Thanksgiving of that year, he had asked me if I would switch the weeks with him. Now, my colleague had been working at that company for 3 years at the point. I didn't think much of it because I had no plans on going anywhere Thanksgiving, and so I switched it with him without checking. I should have done some checks. But then he left on his vacation. When he came home, I discovered, well, while he was away, I quickly discovered the reason why he had wanted to make the switch. It was one of the busiest weeks for that bug rotation. He knew it. He took advantage of me. And that really upset me. And when he came home, I wanted to talk to him, not necessarily to confront him, but to see if he would help me with some other things that I could have used help with, right? At the time, and still to this day, I'm still looking for that life partner. Maybe he could put me on a blind date of some sort. I was hoping for something like that, right? But when he got home and I tried to talk to him, he completely ghosted me. I would see him in the cafeteria, even at the every 2 weeks meeting on updates. He didn't want to talk to me. It became really embarrassing in front of our colleagues. And it's bad enough that I did the favor for him. That's bad enough, but I can live with that. But the fact that he then created a very hostile environment every day when I went to work became intolerable. And I ended up leaving that job. I think that was his goal. He wanted me out after I gave him. That's how he repays me for the favor I gave him. In retrospect, I didn't speak up for myself. When he was ghosting me like that in the office, in front of other people, I should have done something. In retrospect. Very upsetting. A few years after that, now we were in the pandemic. I was working at a tutoring center during Thanksgiving of 2021. Now, most of my colleagues took off that week of Thanksgiving. Right? You got to remember the sentiment people had in late 2021. A lot of quiet quitting, a lot of anger quitting, right? people leaving their jobs when anything didn't go right, and I didn't do any of that. I kind of took advantage of other people who did that and left me with no competition, right? But I stayed behind at the tutoring center, and this is how my boss repays me. We had a really busy week, right? We got 10, 12 students. You gotta keep in mind, right? This is during the pandemic when a lot of these kids really needed a lot of support. And only my boss and I were there, two of us, and 10, 12 students. Finally, on Thanksgiving Eve, on Wednesday night, it was I'd gone there for a 4 hour shift, and on the very last hour, there was only one student. It was one of my favorite students, and I was like, "Oh, thank God!" I get a little bit of peace that I get my favorite students. And then my boss asked me to leave, and it was really upsetting. I should have spoken up. Hey, this is my favorite student after this whole week of hell. Really? Maybe not those words, but in retrospect, I should have spoken up. I left because I don't want to cause conflict. Right? We had enough drama with COVID and all that. Right? This was Thanksgiving of 2021. We were still wearing masks over in Seattle, and there was still a lot of drama. Right? We didn't know if things were going to go back to normal, right? And I didn't want to add to that, so I left. I thought, well, at least I get to head off to my vacation. I was going to go to Wallace, Idaho. I got to Wallace, and it's we're getting close to the holidays. I'm thinking about doing some shopping myself, right? And I thought to myself, gee, I wonder if my boss is going to pay me for that 1 hour, right? After all, that whole week was not your normal week. And he saved a lot of money from only having me instead of he normally would have had to have 3, 4 tutors for that many students. Right? He already saved a lot of money, right? Granted, it wasn't his choosing to do that. And I was thinking to myself, gee, is he going to pay me for that hour? And I get my pay stubs on November 30, and I look and he doesn't. And it was just insulting more than anything. I mean, it's not going to break me, right? But it was insulting more than anything else after I had all that I had done for him. And long story short, it became a downward spiral. It contributed to me leaving that job, which I don't know if it was his goal. It probably wasn't because this was at a time when people were leaving jobs left and right, right? It's not a very good business decision, in my opinion, on his part. But then again, it wasn't a good decision on my part to not speak up when this was going on, right? So can't really say who was more at fault at this, but lesson learned. It's really nice. Part of the reason I love money so much is that when I have six figures in my bank account, I don't, but I'm going to. When I have six figures in my bank account, it makes it so much easier to tell my colleague, hey, I really don't appreciate this attitude. You're making me feel very unwelcome at work when you hide out every time I see you in the conference room or in the cafeteria. Can we resolve some differences, please? Right? It makes it a lot easier to say that. It makes it a lot easier to say to my boss, hey, this is my favorite student. After all this, can I at least have my favorite student for this 1 hour? Right? It makes it a lot easier to do that. Right? Or even if he really did need me to leave, hey, I need to clean up because we're getting close to Thanksgiving. Well, could I get paid for this hour? Right? I kind of budgeted for it. Right? It makes it so much easier to say that when you have backup. Right? Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't. It was during COVID. It was early in my career. All right, please remember the like button is radioactive, right? It has a half-life of 138.376 days. So if you touch it, you'll definitely get poisoned, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So like button has a half-life of 138.376 days. The dislike button has a half-life of 2 times 10 to the 19 years, right? Choose carefully. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.